Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be, dear viewer. I almost forgot that we were starting then. I pressed the button and I looked away. Well, here we are then. It's Halloween, so happy Halloween, I suppose, for those people around the world that are enduring children demanding confectionery. Jean is in fact going to, are you going to be handing out confectionery shortly, Jean?
I'll give you the tour of the haunted house here in a little while if you're interested.
Oh, very, very good. That's wow. That seems to be going above and beyond. That's a good for you. You're at your fire station somewhere. Is that in Wimberly in Texas?
Yes, it is. We're at Wimberly Fire and Rescue, and every year we put on a Halloween sort of haunted house, a safe place, if you will, for the kids to come, and they don't get any razor blades in their apples or any untoward things. So, that's what we're trying to do right now is just to give them a safe place to come and trick or treat.
And I must say, Gene, that mask is absolutely amazing. Well done, mate. I don't know how you managed that. I don't know how you managed that at all. We know that Jonathan's on a telephone call at the moment. We're going to jump to him, but we'll disregard Jonathan at the moment, and we've got to Dr. Crutsinger. How do I say that? So how do I say your name?
Crutsinger.
Okay, well that's all right then. Now you have launched Scrolls. It's Fly for Fall. Something which I can't take part in because it's not fall here; it's spring. But what is Fly for Fall? What are you doing with that?
Yeah, so this is a new campaign that we launched, and it doesn't just have to be fall. It's what it is an experiment to crowdsource drone data across the world, particularly for foliage. So we're calling it Fly for Fall, and you can go to fly4fall.com and check out the instructions. But basically what it is taking very easy 360 panoramic imagery with the Hanger app. So we're using the Hanger app. It's a free app that works with DJI drones, and it's iOS only, unfortunately, but we needed a way to easily standardize the process. But it's an experiment to crowdsource phenology data, so how plants look across the world. And so we're interested not just in areas where it's fall, but also the tropics, or it could be the southern hemisphere where it's springtime. And so the idea is really to build on volunteer citizen pilots to go out to areas that are safe to fly and not controversial, like natural areas, not in national parks, where you can fly and get a quick 360-degree panoramic of the foliage in your area, the plants and how they look.
And how are you going to then sort of, how shall I put it, standardize the results? Because I guess because you're using the Hanger app, it might assume then that it's going to be DJI products that are going to do the flying. But then how are you going to ensure the continuity of results across multiple countries and different times of day?
Right. So we've relaxed some of kind of the scientific rigors for this first process. We asked people to fly at the standard default setting in the app, which is 100 meters or 300 feet. And we asked them just to go to kind of basic vegetated areas in their area. And we will plot those then on a master map. So we're working with the UC Berkeley GIS team to plot those out. And then we'll use those to kind of create a standard vegetation score of phenology and what stage or life cycle the plants are. And so it's really a proof of concept study to show what the drone community can do. If we put a call out to pilots across the world, what are we going to get? Will we get dozens across the world? Will we get hundreds? Will we get thousands? It'll be interesting to see, but that's what we're trying to find out.
I see you've got a lovely one from Scotland up there at the moment. So that's very nice. I saw that on your website. So is it just let's see what happens, or do you have an expectation? I think coming straight to my mind is it wouldn't take many volunteers for you to get as much information as hundreds of students would get across their school year, maybe hundreds of hectares rather than a few hectares. How would it normally work? How's this normally done?
Yeah, so currently there is a network of fixed cameras throughout the globe called the PhenoCam network. And what that does is take pictures of plants regularly in lots of different ecosystems. In this case, we're replicating it in the air and making it mobile. So that way you could scale it as big as you want. And you could ask lots of different questions. It doesn't just have to be about plants. It could be about all sorts of scientific or social or any kind of geospatial questions. The reason we chose the panoramics is it's an intuitive way to deal with the imagery. It's not as rigorous as mapping, but it's better than just a single photo, and it's how you look around. And so we have a lot of schools that are volunteering and getting students out, and so the submissions are starting to pour in.
So when you're then looking at that data, is it going to be machine read, or is somebody going to be subjective? Look at every image and tag and identify stuff on it.
I think it'll be a combination of both. So some stuff we can just look at and do a score, an objective score, but we're looking at analyzing the 360-degree photos so that we could do more of a rigorous statistical analysis. So you could imagine plotting across latitude, and up in Alaska or the Arctic, the leaves are totally gone. And then in Tennessee or Scotland, there's still leaves, foliage out there. And then down into the tropics, it's green all year round. And so we'll be able to use some of the image processing to analyze it and start plotting it against climate or geography or habitat type. So lots of different ways to analyze the same data.
And why? So if I was to go and take a 360 and then move down the way a little bit and take another one, I could almost start making a 3D map out of it. That's why I'm a bit lost why the traditional mapping would give you 3D. So I'm a bit lost as to why you didn't go down that route with this.
Yeah. So part of the issue is that we wanted to choose something that was really fast and easy for people to collect and wasn't going to be a ton of photos. We could have easily done a transect, or we could have used video. These panoramics really are a one-button push, and the drone takes pictures in a circle and then pivots the gimbal and then takes them at 45 degrees and then straight down. And then it's sent to the cloud and processed for you by the Hanger cloud, and it's totally free. And this way, they didn't need a subscription to Pix4D, or they don't need to take hundreds of photos. It's not as rigorous in high resolution as those mapping techniques, but it's simple. And so the trade-off was, let's get out there and crowdsource something that's super simple, show the proof of concept, see what the data look like, and start asking all the questions that we're interested in.
Above and beyond in the chat saying, over time, might this be useful for climate change if georeferenced?
Yeah, and so the nice thing about these points is they are all georeferenced, and we can get the precise lat and long for them. And if you are a climate change scientist, doing plant phenology, or how the plants look throughout the growing season, is really tedious. You have to go out every single day and fly. And if you wanted to do, let's say, that across latitude, you'd have to drive for days and days and days just to kind of collect all these points. Well, you could imagine doing call outs to citizen science drone pilots and getting them to collect imagery in target areas or in random areas. And the way that we could scale this for good in the future would be lots of potential there.
And would you hope the same volunteers would turn out every year? Oh, someone from Australia. Hi there, Skeltora. That's a great name for Halloween. But would you hope for people to go out every quarter or something like that if you got some real dedicated volunteers and take it a bit further?
Yeah, so I think, I kind of equate it to what we've seen with Christmas bird counts. So every year at Christmas, all the birders go out and they do the standard bird surveys. And that has been a really good way to quantify birds for decades. And so we could have a network of pilots that go out and depending on the question, they could collect it every single day if they wanted to. I mean, it's really takes about 2 minutes or so to collect the data, to fly up, capture the data, and land and transfer it to your phone. And so I would imagine the same people typically that volunteer will continue to volunteer. They get excited about it's fun to look at the imagery and geek out on kind of what Scotland looks like this time of year. It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I immediately got that the fall idea would make for lovely colours and all that sort of thing. And enough people are going out there and doing it anyway, aren't they? You see the YouTube videos are coming up left, right, and centre of it. So no, that's fantastic. It'll be very interesting to follow this and see where it goes and what it does for you. I'm going to throw it over the floor, gents. Has anyone else got any questions? Nope.
No, I think is Hanger participating with you on this? I mean, did y'all work out some special deal with them? I mean, we know most of the lads over there at Hanger, so.
Yeah, so there, it's it's kind of powered by the Hanger app, but for the most part, I was looking for a free app that did the processing for you, and so the Hanger folks, mostly I just asked them if I got a lot of people, would it crash their app, and they assured me it's going to work. And so, for the most part, they're kind of just promoting it themselves, and we're just taking advantage of the process that they have. And so that's kind of the relationship with Hanger. And then we have about a half dozen schools that are participating, and other companies, really anyone that wants to get out and fly. We're looking for data points across the globe.
I notice again in the comments, Matthew Gordon says that the entire female flood map needs updates, and I must admit, I've often thought at a micro level, a local level, it would be good even just for me to do a little bit of a river. We've got a dam up the road. We live between two dams. It would be interesting to 2 or 3 times a year fly that length of river and just see what's going on there and just look for encroachment. And it would be fantastic if there was someone like Hanger or another service provider that would take citizen science data as a free layer, shall we say, and drop it on their maps and allow some grown-ups to then look at it and consider what they're seeing. I think you could get a lot of buy-in from people for environmental stuff. I really do. I think actually it's a no-brainer. It's why I came. It's why I joined this crazy world, and I'm sure many other people as well.
Well, Gary, since the Hanger app is free, all you need to do is set up a website so people can upload their stuff and just go for it. Start doing it.
Well, yeah, that's 360s though, isn't it? I think I'd be.
Well, no, you could do the whole thing. Yeah, you could do orthos and all that good stuff.
Does that mean I have to buy one of those awful Apple products?
Yes, you will.
Unfortunately, well, I'm afraid, as they say in The Apprentice, or not The Apprentice, in the other thing, I'm out. Anyway?
You're fired. You're fired.
That's what they say in that one, isn't it? But I'm out. No.
Well, yeah. And I do think that moving forward, that a lot of these kind of crowdsourcing initiatives will be incredibly powerful, both from the drone world, but as well as satellite data, sensors on the ground, kind of merging all the data sets together. And I think that it will probably end up being the schools and the universities and the public agencies that will end up in the foundations that will end up supporting these initiatives more so than kind of the venture capital side of things. But it's definitely crowdsourcing and getting these initiatives going is now easier than ever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose it'll be a matter of generating a community that is, and you're bob on right with like the Christmas bird counts. The same thing happens here. Game counts around the farms. Yeah, that's exactly the people that you need to get on board, because they do turn up every year and love it and are very useful. So yeah, no, you're bob on right. We shall watch this with close attention. I'm going to quickly make a call out for our lawyer friend on the telephone who's still muted. Are you still no longer with us?
Wait for the typed message. You'll see it pop up. Yeah. Just
there'll be some sort of swear word or something that'll pop up now.
Well, you know what? We can talk about him. He is starting to put together some pretty good informational classes on his website. I don't know if you've seen that, but
I have seen it, but I wouldn't dare compliment anything he does. I never reckon that. Yeah, I know, and some great stuff about the lattice system. Sorry, I say that wrong every time. Lance, isn't it? Lance.
Yep.
Lance. It's not how you spell Lance.
L-A-A-N-C.
Yeah, see, it's not Lance. That's not
Lance.
It's Lank. It's Lank, exactly. So hopefully you'll get off that phone call before the hour's up, and he'll tell us all of his thoughts on that. But he has some great stuff on that, and some great Part 107 stuff and advice as well. So where should we jump with this then? If he's not going to jump on this, the Rotor Riot Bridge diving. We're hoping that the main man's going to join us at some stage, and we're getting there early because Jonathan's on a phone call. But Bruce, you're one of the people that put a video out about that. What do you say about bridge diving in Canada?
Well, yeah, it's created a bit of controversy, but I think that's what Chad wanted. I mean, I can see where he's coming from. Perhaps my perspective is a little different to most people in the hobby and the community, because I'm also an entrepreneur, and I, over many years, have developed brands, and I know that a 60-second spot on the 6 o'clock news is worth an awful lot of money. And, you know, buying an ad in peak time on television costs a fortune. So why not just do something controversial and let the news media give you a free ad, which is basically what's happened now. I see one of the news channels in Canada has picked up on that particular video. They've run a piece on it. And he's just balancing the need to, you know, make a money, establish a brand, with the very fine line, which is where you go too far and you actually damage your brand by doing something bad. In the past, I've done a couple of things which got them into trouble. There was a building dive in Atlanta, I think, which they took the video down. But this time, I think he was boxing clever. He thought, I won't do it in my own backyard. I'll go to Canada and do it. And then if I get in trouble, I just come back. But the problem is Canada, being such a terrible regulatory environment, the Canadian government and regulators are just looking for excuses to clamp down on these things. And he's given them a lot of material to say, this is too dangerous, we can't allow these drones. And as far as the video goes, I was on the fence. You know, I can see part of me as a young tearaway guy that says, hey, no one got hurt, it was a great video, what's the problem? The other half of me, which has been around for a lot longer, says, yeah, no one got hurt, but that is as much luck as management. And you could get the same effect without putting public at risk. You know, risk doesn't have to be a part of a fantastic video. I think in the video that I put up, I put a link to the guy that flew his drone under the train and into the train. That was brilliant. There was no risk to anybody, but it was actually a better video. You don't have to endanger people to make really cool videos that are quite jaw-dropping. So I think Chad needs to go back and revisit his strategy for establishing the brand, because he's alienated a lot of people now. I think that video has probably done more harm to the brand than good. He's got his 66 seconds of fame, but a lot of people in the community were aware of Rotor Riot and maybe subscribers and tolerating them now have just switched right off. It's a dangerous thing to do. And the most worrying thing from my point of view is today in the news report that came out, a member of the crew, the Rotor Riot crew, apparently has stated that, the drone we used was under 250 grams. And I'm thinking, that's the worst thing you could have said. You're trying to cover your own ass by saying, oh, it was legal, but you're dropping everyone else into it, because until now the regulators have said if it's sub 250 grams, it's small, it's light, it's not an issue. But having seen that video, I fear that regulators possibly around the world will say, we didn't realize a sub 250 gram could do that sort of thing, so let's ban them or let's regulate them as well. So we could have lost the one little glimmer of light, that sub 250 grams where you can do basically whatever you like. Could have lost that because these guys just want to cover their ass, and I'm not at all happy with that. I'm on the fence in respect to the video, but this statement that it's rubbish, it's a lie, because they were using standard mini quads, which are like 650 grams. So they've lied to try and cover their asses, which is not a good look. That's going to make the situation so much worse.
Hey, Bruce, I was just thinking for those folks out there that don't know what Rotor Riot did, you want to describe that flight?
Yeah, well, there's a thing called diving with mini quads, with racing drones. They're very maneuverable, and so what often you do is you fly to the top of a tall structure and then you sort of dive vertically down it. The idea being that you get as close as possible to the structure without hitting it. And it's impressive because you're falling at a great speed and the structure's rushing by. The video looks really great. And then you pull out as late as possible at the bottom. So it's kind of it's a challenge of skill thing. And in the past, we've seen people diving tall chimneys, tall buildings. But this bridge, the problem with the bridge was that there's a lot of busy traffic on the road below. And they flew very close to the traffic. In fact, one part, I'm pretty sure they flew over the traffic. And we all know that when everything works fine, there's no problems. But we're dealing with hobby-grade equipment here. We're dealing with things that can fail at any moment. You don't have the necessary level of control to ensure total safety. And I know a few people have said, oh, yeah, but there's more people killed in rugby or football games every year. But the difference is the people who participate in a sport, a dangerous sport, they make a choice based on knowing all the risks. The people driving along the bridge had no idea of the risk they were facing with the drone over their head. So it's not an informed choice for them. You can endanger yourself and your friends as much as you like if they agree, but you can't endanger third parties who have no knowledge of what's going on. That's where the line falls, I think.
Yep, that's a good description.
Yeah, look, it's a super impressive video. There's no doubt it is a visually spectacular sort of thing to do, and really we can rewind the clock all the way back to when Trappy started and was the king of the hill, and he was diving down cliffs and in valleys and stuff in Austria and Switzerland, whatever, and it looked amazeballs, absolutely amazeballs. And I think you can still do that. I think people are saying in the comments, and you're right, the video has been pulled. Hopefully Chad will join us. He is getting off an aeroplane. He's traveling today. He said he'd try and join us, so hopefully. But we won't hang, draw, and quarter him when he does, right? All right, let's promise to be nice. Well, maybe not Bruce, because, you know, it's Bruce. But, yeah, it is very tricky, isn't it? And, well, what else do you do on an FPV channel? We on this channel just talk nonsense. But what else do you do on an FPV channel? You can build some, you can learn your tricks, and then you can watch one go zing, and yeah, I don't know. It's unless you're doing it. I think unless you're doing it, it's not all that exciting. If you're doing it,
well, they've done other stuff. They did the drones and guns thing. That was great. It was safe, and it was really spectacular. And everyone wanted to know what happens if you shoot a drone. But they did it. It was done in a controlled environment. It was also the third-person FPV drifting one with Tommy, the guy that did the bridge dive. He's a really good, very skilled pilot. You know, one of the top drone pilots in the world. So him dive, everyone was saying, but he's got the skills to dive the bridge. And I said, yeah, that's true. But he did another video in which it showed him make a mistake. And as a result, a car crashed, a real car. He was in a drift car, and he was supposed to be flying his drone so that the driver of the car had video goggles on. He could see the car from outside and drive it accordingly. But Tommy drifted his drone out of view so that it could no longer see the car. And as a result, the guy in the car drove into a concrete wall and broke the car. So things can happen. Bad things can happen. Doesn't matter how skilled you are. You know, you can always have a bad day or just slip up somewhere along the line. So, yeah, there is a way to produce the thrill and excitement and adrenaline without risking third parties. And I think as the Turk FPV, the train video, that proved that. That was a brilliant video, flying under a moving train and then flying into one of the open carriages and sort of landing and then taking off and coming out again. And there was no one around to get hurt. And the worst that would have happened is his drone would have got crushed by a train. And I think drone versus train, well, I don't think there's any doubt as to the outcome of that. So he was taking a risk that was all his own equipment, everything. No third parties were affected. So I think that it can be done. You just have to think more creatively. It's easy to do exciting stuff if you're endangering other people, because whenever you endanger people, you know, the audience goes, oh, but to get the same response without endangering people requires you to think a little bit outside the box. And someone actually, I can't remember the name, but a channel posted a video this morning saying that maybe Rotor Riot have jumped the shark. And I don't know if people are aware of that piece of terminology, but it basically means run out of ideas. Because they've reached the point where they're empty for ideas, so they're just increasingly doing more radical stuff that is pretty much the same, but more risky. Because they've dived buildings before, and so just diving an ordinary building wouldn't get the same response. So you dive a bridge with cars and everyone goes, oh. And so where to now, though? They've run out of ideas. They need to go back and think, more carefully evaluate what they're trying to achieve and the best way to achieve that. And the big thing is, it's not just about them now, it's about the whole community. They are playing with other people's rights and privileges. And you've got to be careful when you do that, because if you if the Canadian regulators come and say, right, we're banning 250 gram, whatever, then they have done a huge disservice to the hobby, and they'll never recover from that.
And we are always alarmist, aren't we? But we are living in difficult times, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world. The regulator is looking hard at us, so we have to be careful. Fly for Fall and things like that are the positive stories that we can all get on board with, and hopefully change some of that perception. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Now, Juliet Romeo, are you still on the phone? Are you still on the phone, Mr. Ruprecht? So when he's here, he's only ever comes up with 1 or 2 words for an answer. Ask him a question, and he'll say yes or no. And then now he's just on the phone for the whole.
I tried to coax him off, and he is just in a terminal holding pattern on that phone.
It's shocking.
He's locked on the outer marker, and we can't budge him off.
Speaking of fly for fall, I had an idea a while ago, several years ago, when I started doing aerial photography with drones. And I thought, well, we've got Google Earth and it's great, but some of the imagery is pretty crap because it's done by satellite. Why doesn't Google offer the ability to put private layers or individual layers on top of it, so that if you're in an area with satellite imagery, but you've flown a drone over it, you can upload your drone images, and then someone can come along, look at the satellite images, and then have a menu that says, well, these alternative sources are available, and it can switch to that and give you a much higher resolution imagery of the same area because someone's flown a drone over it and uploaded the imagery. That would sort of fit into this, what I call it, flash mob drone photography thing, crowdsourced drone photography. And so it can go beyond the scientific aspects. It can go just into the general, aerial video stuff. And Google's got the might to do it. I wonder if they'll ever get around to actually allowing that.
I think it's going to be georeferencing issues.
Can I put my hand up and show off? If you happen to look over there, you look at Google Earth and you look over there and you go back to 2009, you'll see some of my imagery on Google Earth. They did exactly that, and it's rubbish. it's absolutely rubbish. But
it's the Gene's point. It's the Gene's point with the georeferencing. Google's got some really good AI stuff now. I'm pretty sure that if you uploaded an image and they compared it to the satellite image, they could overlay it in a way that perfectly mapped it to the underlying image using their algorithms for pattern matching. So I don't think the georeferencing can be too much of an issue.
It was actually part of, and I can't remember the name, it was a citizen science project, and the people that, now, dear Americans, you are going to hate me for pronouncing this wrong. Is it the Gownus Canal or something like that in New York? There was a big, whatever. It's some horribly polluted water. Well, here we are, back to rivers, and that's what they were doing. Oh, I wish I could remember their name. Their logo's a boot. And right back in the day, they were using a Nokia N95 phone strapped to any old model airplane to get the images. But they had they mapped that canal and they were tracking the pollution. And they did what was that big pollution event off Texas? They did that as well. But yeah, I just happened to be part of that, and several of us got our images.
The Houston Ship Channel caught fire one time, so there you go.
The what? Sorry, say again.
The Houston Ship Channel caught on fire one time.
Well, yes. I mean, I understand water will do that over there. It's a very different world to where I live.
Yeah,
you can run your car on water.
Yeah, over here, yeah, especially if you get it out of the Houston Ship Channel.
Wow. And how long did that burn for?
It didn't burn very long. It was, but it did point out how polluted it was, and they actually have done a lot to clean it up.
And I suppose I can also run back to the best story we ever had at SUS News, which was a citizen scientist, if you will, but it was a citizen anyway, with, remember that exposure camera platform from, again, 2010, 2011, which was a big high-wing thing with a DSLR on the front. This is, you've got to remember, this is pre-DJI days. And the chap that found the abattoir that was pumping blood into river of blood. The river of blood. That was the best story we ever had.
and that had some very far-reaching impacts. Trust me, some of the legislation that we now have in Texas came directly from that incident.
In what way?
Well, it was a very large meat packing company, and heads rolled, as you might well imagine. And as the very wealthy heads rolled, they wanted to make sure that the remaining heads didn't get chopped off. So they influenced the barristers and the legislator here. And next thing we know, we had this very feel-good piece of legislation that was to keep people from looking into other people's business. So yeah, it was a mess.
Yeah, and then that's the problem, isn't it, for the citizen scientist thing in Texas? I think you might have issues with the imagery people have taken. If somebody objects, there's legislation in place to knock it out of the way.
Look, the guy called me when he got the pictures and said, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And I said, "Well, you know, you obviously need to report it." But he says, "Then what's going to happen? This could be bad." And I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, it's going to be bad all the way around." But yeah, it was pretty crazy.
And the amazing,
and that's why we tried to start with just mapping kind of natural foliage and trying not to be controversial. You know, we thought a little bit about that in terms of, you know, not trying to get folks up in arms, you know, whether we were, that way we weren't crowdsourcing emergencies or some other thing that would get people into trouble. Just kind of pick a natural area that's not in a natural park that's safe to fly in and get us a shot.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Greg, but just the very act of taking the picture could be controversial, and it could be used in a lawsuit because we're already discovering historical prosecutions based on aerial imagery that has been collected years ago when a habitat dies and somebody gets the blame and it ends in a big lawsuit. So just from a comparative standpoint, it could be used in a legal suit.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But at the end,
hopefully it won't be.
At the end of the day, though, surely the right thing to do is the right thing to do. And that blood was, there was so much of it in that. It was
I get it. I'm with you.
But there was so much of it that you could actually see it with reverse back to Google Earth, but you could see it in Google Earth images. When you knew what you were looking for, you could see it. And what that story actually said to me was there's a lack of sensing within the river of pollutants. You shouldn't have to need somebody to fly and get the photos, and apparently it was a stinky. You shouldn't, as a society. Oh, hang on, I can feel my high horse. My high horse is just rode into town. But as a society, we shouldn't need to require somebody to put the neck on the block. Because yeah, that chap now, if he did it again, he'd be prosecuted. So, and that's terrible. That's absolutely scandalous and the wrong way around. It shouldn't be that way. And there should be sensors in the river. And if they can't detect liters and liters and liters of blood being put into the river, then yeah, it was what it was, Stevie, was it was just they just put the pipe because it saved them loads of money of disposing of that blood in the correct way. It just saved them. And that was it about 200 meters, I think, the pipeline or something like that, wasn't it? And it was directly into the river. It was a long way, and that was a long way.
Yeah, it depends on who you want to believe and what the accident was and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. Oh, Bruce in the other comments here, he says sensors in the river. Am I advocating censorship? Yes, I'm advocating censorship. Hang on, the horse is getting higher. I think we're at an interesting time though, where technology will allow citizens to have sensors within their homes that can measure all sorts of things, and we'll be able to hold all sorts of industries to account. You'll be able to say, okay, this isn't signed off at the Ministry of Sensor Sensing Department, but it's good enough to say that we are detecting this in the air, that in the air, and the other. Yeah, anyway, I'll get off my high horse. What are we saying in the comments? Space Coast just dumped 28 million gallons of raw sewage into the Indian River Lagoon. Blimey. That's not good, is it? Our river borders with Canada, they have miscellaneous spills on their side. Yeah, no, rivers have got to be we all need water. Anyway, also, somebody take over, please. Somebody take the rant stick.
It's all yours. It's all yours.
Damn, I've dug myself a hole, haven't I? All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Ruprecht, he says he's got the sound muted. I'll try and point at him. Hang on. Am I pointing at the right? You there. You. Do you think that's hurting? Come on.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, hey, he's there.
I just got off the phone. So.
Very well. You're a very busy man, aren't you? I mean, who are we to stop you ordering your fast food?
Hold on, let me get on my microwave. My microwave treadmill.
Of course, you haven't got a treadmill.
My treadmill sounds like microwave. I don't understand that. So everyone just thinks I'm just ordering, like I'm getting food, I'm throwing it in the microwave, I'm eating. But anyways,
Very
my
good.
treadmill.
I'm just being asked if we're watching the chat. Zoltan, what do you want before we go to you? Before we go to Mr. Rubric, he says, "Oh, what do we guys think of Lychee and the offline flight planning capability of it? Anyone know Lychee very well? I've tried it a few times. Gene, do you know it?"
Yeah. Not terribly impressed with it. I think that we've got more interesting things in the works as we look at the LANC or the Lance or whatever they're calling it. I'm interested in getting Jonathan's take on this thing since we're about to divvy up the airspace to 0 to 200.
Trust you to drive it straight to the point, Jonathan. Over you. Yes, perhaps you could drive that home a bit further.
Oh, sure. If he's going to beep on buttons there, he can tell us about Lance and how wonderful it's going to be, or when we're going to start our first class action lawsuit.
Well, the only problem with I know everyone wants to talk about first class, that's a whole nother conversation and a half over the litigation stuff. Okay, so how come all the non-attorneys are always like, let's talk about lawsuits, and the attorneys are like, I just heard, hey, go please dig a pool for me, and here's a small spoon. That's what I heard, but I'm like, that's a crazy amount of work. That's what I hear. Everyone's like, it's so easy for you.
I can bring a fork. There's a fork.
Yeah, it's like,
I've got a fork.
Yes, a fork. So it'll make it even harder than a small spoon.
Well, we can get a spork.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're kind of going halfway. We're being innovation. Yes. Part of this.
We can talk about that as well. You're president in innovation in a minute, but let's go with Lance. Lank, as you should really call it.
It's Lance. It's Lance.
No, it's Lank. It's Lank.
Oh, okay. What is this going to be like? It's going to be like the dissenters are just going to mispronounce it or something, right? But I guess, anyways, so yeah, Lance, there's some benefits to that, right? Because you can get some quick airspace authorizations. If you're at one of the 49 airports, they're eventually going to start trying to roll that out to all the other airports. Interesting note is when I was thinking about this, when they had the 49 airports that they're doing these testing at, and I was like, okay, at this time of the year, you're rolling out to those 49. Wouldn't it maybe make more sense to put it out into warmer weather environments? Because when you actually take the drone sightings data, and if you've ever run the data and just kind of scoped it out, and I've been doing this, drone sightings and registration of drones always have to do with large populations. Drone sightings are always having to do with where there's a lot of people, right? So if it's like really cold up there in Minnesota where a lot of these tests are and stuff, it's like, really does the Lance system, if it's being used to justify trying to wrangle in the illegal commercial drone operators that are flying near these airports, wouldn't it make more sense to do that in warmer environments where you have a higher percentage of that? But just putting that whole aside, there's also another interesting discussion there about there's like 14,000 COAs, which have been already approved. And of the drone sightings data that the FAA puts out, have they cleaned out all of the lawful flights from that drone sightings data? Right? Because they're using this drone sightings data to then justify we need Lance. And it's like, well, the data that you have, do we know if those guys are lawful or unlawful? Because you have 14,000 COAs running around out there. How many of those flights were lawful? And of those, could you also have had flights that were, how many of those flights even needed COAs, right? Okay, because you also have recreational flights that don't need COAs. Right. So that it's just a bunch of data with these big numbers that are thrown out there. And then the FAA gives us this data months after the fact. So if you saw that Federal Register announcement regarding the FAA asking the Office Management Budget for the clearance, well, the interesting part about that was they said that the average drone sightings per month was like 250. If you look at the previous data that was submitted, that was released by the FAA, which is months old, it was only around, I think, like 140. So it's like, why are you intentionally giving us this it's old data. Why aren't you being forthcoming about it? And why are we having the data released in this Excel spreadsheet format that is kind of difficult to work with all this stuff jumbled up? Why didn't you pull it out? I mean, you can do some Excel functions and stuff, and you can extract the text, but it's almost like they're making people work for it. And if you look at other databases that the FAA has, everything is very, very particular, and you can kind of sort stuff out. Why is it when you get to Drone World and it's all like, you know, it's all put together like not that well?
Funny you should put it. I'm sorry to butt in to you there, but it's funny you should mention that, because I started looking at the data and I thought, well, I'll extract stuff from it and I'll make something useful, and I gave up. And I gave up because I had a feeling that, like, nah, this is all just BS to justify what they're doing. I'm afraid that's what I came away with. I thought there's no point in. I know how this is going to end. If you look at the UK, forgotten the name of the place that does the AirProx reports, but if you have a look at theirs, they've just updated their AirProx things, and they've got data for all aircraft types, so all reports going back to, I think, about 2000, and it's all on a map, and it's all either RPA or whatever, and you can look for patterns, and it's all very neat and tidy, and the FAA could look at that. But yeah, sorry, Jonathan, I'll let you go. Oh, and also I noticed that you say it's 49 airfields, but I see that Skyward today are saying it's 45 airfields, so they're beginning to drop away already.
Oh, I don't know. It was originally 50 is what was announced by Greg McNeil and Forbes. Then it was like, what was it, Greensboro or something dropped off. And then there was only 49. Maybe there's a few left. I don't know. And then, yeah, so I don't know. I wasn't really included in those conversations.
But isn't it giving some towns that have it, isn't that giving those Part 107 pilots a heck of a commercial advantage during the test period? Their businesses, if I had a Part 107 and I was in America, I'd move to one of those towns if I was struggling, just to get some flights in.
Well, I mean, it benefits whoever is there at that, that location. But if they leave that location, right, they're going to have a harder time trying to get business at the non-Lance type of airports. And so, yeah, it's a problem. I mean, when you look at this, you almost go wondering, was this designed to fail, right? When they granted the COAs,
yes, exactly.
Only out for 6 months.
Exactly.
It's like, wait, you just granted the COAs for 6 months out, and then you did anybody learn their lesson from the whole 333 thing, where it was 2 years out and people were still renewing those, and then they didn't learn their lesson? And so the FAA is intentionally designing this stuff so it's not future proof. So then there's going to have to be lots and lots and lots of repeat work that didn't really need to be done. And then it ends up causing this giant traffic jam. And you go, well, why was it designed this way? Because the FAA touts it as they have the most advanced system ever. Everything's awesome, and it's this seems like it would have been fixed by other people. One wonders if it was intentionally just designed that way so as to slow the progress of things down. And with this land system, it's a solution to a problem that should have never really been there. But even if this authorizations are pretty rapid, it does provide some benefit in a pinch to the drone operators operating in certain industries like cinematography, where they have very little heads up on the location and when and where to fly. It's just, you just get a notice, hey, about a week or outer, we're going to be flying at this location. And it's very unworkable to have COAs at these airports, unless you just want to grab COAs for all the airports, which is what a lot of the cinematography guys do. And so then because of that, because everything takes so long, then you actually have an overabundance of COAs. And then you create even more work because they don't trust that you'll be able to get it done in time. And so people are just filing for COAs left and right, and just further backs the whole system up even more.
And at the end of the day, this doesn't really solve the safety problem, does it? Because our Best Buy flyers still going to go out and fly. It's going to make no difference at all to that part of it.
there's a lot of discussion there, right? Like, okay, so why are we having to do the paper authorization process to begin with? Why couldn't we just do a phone call to the
like we used to do?
Right, like what manned aircraft do. Like, so you call up the tower and you can get an authorization. When it comes to drone roll, they were specifically forbidden by an order out of DC telling the Air Traffic Organization Office, I mean, the ATC guys, to direct everyone to the portal. They could not actually give a verbal authorization. And so then we have to go this paper route, and then that's backed up, does not work. Now we need the LANC system to come in. Even so, even the paper process, even if you back it up even further, why couldn't we have just done a telephone situation, right? Or we just picked up on the phone, talked to whoever's on the phone, and then just get an authorization then and there to fly.
Absolutely. In the comments, what can the FAA do about home-built drones with the same capability that DJI drones have, i.e. offline programming? Well, you're offering up the info in this permission-based system. You're asking, you're making a request. So it doesn't really matter what you're flying. Correct me if I'm wrong, or just lead me off in another direction, Jonathan, if I'm going wrong. So yeah, it's you. Yes, it's you. As to what can people do about different brands of drones, there are ways through the C2 link, the command and control link, to detect what they are and what they're doing and mitigate the risk. But we're not talking about that really now. So it's not going to solve the Best Buy flyer, and a lot of the services, or they seem to rush back from it. They're very keen to tell us it's a this trial now, but should moving forward it be part of a pay-per-view, pay to play?
That's coming.
Flight permission. Shouldn't the drone industry be pushing for manned aviation to have to pay the same fees if they're in there at the same time?
Oh, that's a great that's a whole yeah, that's more than a can of worms and a half. That's I do not have a 20-foot pole to touch that with. I only have a 10-foot pole to touch that with, because I'm pretty sure if I touch it with the 10-foot pole, a lot of the aviation people, I don't know, but there's a great question about how they treat it very incongruently, where for manned aircraft, they see, any type of moving in on aviation territory is, seceding preemption kind of protections away to the states and the local governments. And so you see how manned aviation was very in an uproar regarding what was going on with the Santa Monica airport incident and all of that, and the litigation going there. And then when it comes to drones, it seems like they don't see that as a potential canary in the coal mine. And so it's some in the aviation community do realize that whatever happens to drones will happen to the manned aviation community, because at the end of the day, while there are a lot of drone flyers around the US, they don't have a lot of money compared to airports, compared to heliports, compared to helicopter operations, compared to these type of companies, that it would be much more lucrative for states, small counties to actually tax them or go after them or try to talk about providing airspace access. And this gets into the whole thing with the Schuster privatization of ATC and that whole thing. So it's bringing up issues that are being heavily battled over right now in manned aviation, and we're starting to kind of figure out which side do we pick, right? Because whichever side we pick, it's kind of like a soccer game, right? We have to pick one side, and the other side is going to try to kill you, right? Which team are you, the blue team or the red team, right? But you got to pick a side, otherwise both sides just kind of hate you and call you, loser. You're like, well, come on, don't you have an opinion? And you're like, no, I want to be Switzerland, and then.
I'd like to be Switzerland as well. Yeah, it'd be very nice, wouldn't it? It'd be very nice indeed. But I think we've had to be very careful about what's being and the motivations behind what's arriving over there. In the comments, people are mentioning ADSB and C2 links and stuff like that. If you've watched this regularly, you'll know my thoughts on ADSB. Why on earth are we trying to adopt a 30-year-old standard into our aircraft that we'll be using in 2040? ADSB is great. Aeroplanes should have it. We can see where they are. Perfect. But we don't need it. We're cleverer than that. That was a bit pompous, wasn't it? But that's the bottom line, isn't it? Why should we adopt? Why should a modern industry adopt a 30-year-old standard? And what else are people saying here? BFA would fight it all the way to our helicopters, but I think it is very unfair. So let's just jump to the president's announce of, I've forgotten what it was called. What was it called? Oh, Drone Integration Program. What's that all about then?
Oh, it's well, yeah. We're gonna know a lot more here soon, based upon the DOT is supposed to put out more information in a Federal Register announcement. So we're kind of asking the questions regarding, is there any funding here, or is this just kind of like what we're doing right now? So that's one big issue. What type of I guess, is there going to be special treatment for any of the state and local tribal partnerships with private industry compared to the partnerships? And if so, then what benefits are those? And then at the same time, does that not also then potentially throw under the bus all of the people that aren't partnered, right? So then, your waiver is now going to take a little bit longer because we got all the waiver guys going and working on the partnership stuff. And so that's going to cause a whole lot of problems if it's that way. So there's a lot of questions that are left unanswered. We were kind of like, well, what do we do with this? Thirdly, actually third and fourthly, I would say you have sunshine laws. And at the states, myself would be one of them, like a consultant that's working with these partnerships. We would be very concerned that a lot of our material would be stolen and ripped off by people using state sunshine laws and state equivalent of FOIAs to get a hold of all that stuff. And even if they didn't,
is that what a sunshine is? Excuse me, sir. Is that what sunshine law is?
Well, sunshine laws are kind of different depending upon the states. Florida is very, very broad regarding the communications when it comes to governmental agencies. So it's very, very broad. So you can get a hold of a lot of information under those laws, and they're different. But being in Florida, this is a very broad one. I'd be very concerned with proprietary information going into these packages to then send off to try to get some type of innovation zone dedicated here locally, because I'd be afraid that then my competitors would then take my stuff, right, and rip it off. Or you would have the governmental agencies starting to spread that information around. What's another concern is that, the people that have been in the industry we saw what happened with the 333s, right? If you were smart enough to know how to do a 333, you were like, oh, this is great. And then it was like, oh, wait, the FAA just put it up on the internet, so a rock could copy and paste it who knows absolutely nothing about the law. And then, right? And then you're like, wow, I'm never doing that. Don't pioneer, because if you pioneer, you spend a lot of money and time and you get ripped off, and then your competitor comes behind you 2 seconds later. So there's a lot of concern there with this, with these pilot programs that, you go out there and you'll be the sucker that gets ripped off by everybody. Like, you might not want to do a lot of work for somebody unless they're willing to pay a lot of coins and it's worth it to you.
Well, and here's another thing that I have to ask too, John. We've already established these 6 or 7 centers of excellence and all that. What happened to them? Why don't we let them fly around those guys? That's what their mandate is to be innovative and that sort of thing. And here we are, we're going to throw it on out to municipalities and locales that don't know a thing about aviation, and they're going to bring consultants in, and the consultants are going to be paid by Skyward or AirMap or whoever, and we're going to end up with a real big potential of this thing being privatized big time with the ones that are successful.
Well, okay, so bringing up another great example, New Mexico State University, they had a test site before all the test sites.
Have you been there? There is nothing there.
Right. Right, but the thing is nobody seems to care about New Mexico State University for some reason. The 6 test sites get it, and then New Mexico is just like, well, whatever happened to them, right? And then what happened? Center of Excellence came out. So it seems like you know, there's always like another iteration of whatever it was that just comes along and then beats up the next guy. And so now we have these small drone innovation zones, right, that are coming out, and you're like, okay, we've seen this before with the Center of Excellence. We saw this before at the 6 test sites, doing that to New Mexico State. So yeah, why would we want to get involved? Because if there's no money here, I don't know why we'd want to get involved.
There wasn't any money involved in the Centers of Excellence either. There was an unfunded mandate.
Yeah, but they charge a fortune to use them, don't they?
Bingo. There you go. You have to pay for it. And that's why everybody stayed away in droves.
That's right. That's why they're not necessarily where it's happening. which is this ridiculous thing, isn't it? That's why I made a little video about solar drones, and people on hobby budgets are just banging up against regulation now. I mean, their aircraft are very successful, and they're managing at low budgets to get really amazing things flying. But they've no test ranges to go and use because it costs a fortune to go and use these things, and it shouldn't. It should be, you know, here, prove that you've done something. Oh, very good. Right, in you go. Here's your pass. You can stay in here for a week and do whatever you like. And that's, you know, it's hampering innovation. And does this not bring the potential for, if I drive, I can't think states to state which one's next to which in America. It's only a small place, isn't it? But you might go almost like driving in one state on the left-hand side of the road, and you jump over the state line, and the next state you'll be driving on the right-hand side of the road. Are you not opening up the potential for lots and lots of islands of regulation all over the place?
Yes.
Jonathan, my answer.
Yes.
Oh, it's a stereo, but it was delayed stereo. Yeah, so that is, and I think that's the danger that people aren't picking up on this whole innovation idea. Is you're going to have islands of flipping regulations, which will be madness and impossible when you've got your 500 drone big surveying company to keep. You're going to have somebody to keep tabs of exactly what you can do in what state and what time and where. It's madness. But anyway, so really that was just an announce without any
it was
without any sort of gumption behind it, or however you want to say it. Okay, all right, what are people saying in the comments? They're saying Zoltan the disparate thinks he might buy 100 pixels and becomes a drone pirate, as Amazon will watch rule skies. Well, yeah, that yeah, you've hit one of the primary companies on the head there, as it were, and they're a bit of a danger. And you say in the UK, they're a little bit of a danger in the UK. I think part of this presidential announce is to try and bring some of the innovation that's happening in Europe back to America. But I say you've got the test sites. There's no reason why it shouldn't be happening there anyway. Again, I'm ranting on. Well, still 3 minutes to go to the top of the hour. Does anybody else have anything else before we run away and try and be on time?
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to wander outside and see what we've got going in the haunted house.
Oh yes, show us the haunted house. That'd be very good.
Yeah, we can end up with that one. And
yes, no, very good. Bruce, have you? Oh, it's no longer Halloween where you are, is it? What's it like in no longer Halloween?
It's nowhere near as scary as it was last night. Oh, terrible last night. Children everywhere. That's scary, those little kids, you know? I mean, even when they're not dressed up, they're still scary.
Absolutely. So like, this doesn't look like much. It looks a bit like a fire station with some coloured gels on it to me. We've got to be nice, haven't we now? Oh, there you go.
There's the the interesting little pumpkin with the twirly eyes that remind me of the last strip club that I went to. But
oh, Jezza Sky says that Bruce, are you growing your beard for Christmas?
Yeah, I do the Santa thing every Christmas.
There you go. Oh, there's the snacks. You didn't give us snacks earlier, did he? Oh.
No.
Are you showing him everything?
Yeah.
Who's
Whoa.
That's all the sweet stuff.
These are all the instruments that are going to make tonight a nightmare for numerous parents. it's while these guys just, you know, drive home or walk away from it all. Cool. All right. Look, it's top of the hour. Does anybody else
Hi,
have?
how are you?
Oh, we're very well. Thank you very much. One has to be polite.
Is this like reality TV here? I feel like here's Gene doing like what is it, like Casey Neistat for like rescue drones or something, I guess. Right?
Gene, before we go, you have been at conferences talking to a couple of conferences talking rescue drones. Was there much of a powwow made of the stuff that happened in Texas? Has there been much of a consensus yet of best practices and where to take it all?
Well, the one thing that came out of all of it was that everybody was very positive about the fact that it was a good use of drones. And I'm surprised that there weren't more people talking about it. I was the only one in Vegas that was talking about the Hurricane Harvey event. And, you know, I put my presentation up there, and there were a lot of people talking theory, a lot of people talking history, and, you know, what we've done. But, you know, when it came time for, you know, where the rubber meets the road, you know, we were up there showing the, you know, the destruction in Harvey. And, you know, you guys here, you saw the video feed that we gave you that was just, you know, we were so surprised it worked. But, you know, let everybody see it. So it was interesting to note that there wasn't more said about it. I mean, I think, I don't know whether it was just because it was Vegas and the commercial drone expo doesn't draw so many public safety people, but the conferences or the breakout sessions that we had were, you know, attended between 25 and 50 people. And interestingly enough, there was about 5% of those people actually had a drone program, and 95% were considering. So, I mean, I was really shocked that it wasn't, you know, the percentages weren't more even. But here you go. You still got a lot of people that are learning and just now thinking about getting into it. So, you know, maybe that's why there wasn't as much said about, you know, the response.
Is it going to be a big powwow or meeting of several of you that were at it? Because an awful lot of experience was gained in the three big storm events you've had there now.
Right.
You'd be ashamed to waste it.
No, you know, as they say, never let a good disaster go unwasted. And I think you're going to see a lot of people coming out. I mean, obviously we're writing some white papers and we've already done a couple of presentations on it. But, you know, with the American Red Cross being in there are literally, and this is what strikes me as odd. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of operators saying, "Oh yeah, I responded for you know Harvey or Irma or Harry or whoever," and you don't see anything. And we've heard these stories about folks going in there with American Red Cross and it, you know, they stood around and they did nothing and they were underutilized but you know, by golly, you know, we were there for Harvey, we were there for whatever, but. You know, I think in reality, when it came down to it, there weren't that many people actually doing the flying. Right. Because we just haven't seen a lot of detailed information coming out that would be useful in that. I mean, we did nice hat, Bruce.
There you go.
But I mean, we collected, you know, very detailed and meticulous logs and, you know, flights and who did what and what we found and that sort of thing, just so we could kind of regurgitate that at the end of the day. And we just haven't seen a lot of people coming up with that. They've got, you see the odd picture of the destruction or odd pictures of the floods and stuff like that. But then when you start wanting to talk about really cohesive data that is useful to incident command and to the recovery stage of it, you just don't see a lot of that. So I'm thinking that there may have been a lot of talk, all hat and no cattle, as we say here in Texas. But
all hat and no cattle. Oh, you gotta love that. Now, Gregory, you have just posted map boxing, which I've put in the live chat. Here we go. We're going to go long again now. I feel it in my water, and that's imagery from California fires. What California fires?
Yeah, so that was the Tubbs fire up in Santa Rosa. That imagery was collected by the local sheriff's department, and then I helped volunteer on the processing side, and then it was published by Sonoma County for the residents. That's from Coffee Park. That's one of the hardest hit neighborhoods that are out there, and so that was a couple thousand homes that were lost in that particular fire, and that's 10,000 photos processed together over a couple of days.
Nice.
And so that was all taken actually at about 30 meters at 100 foot. That was what the COA was for at that particular point. So it took a long time to map about 350 acres. And one of the interesting things that occurred, we were looking for, let's see, I just posted another link, a more rapid way to collect the data for some of the other neighborhoods that couldn't be mapped in full, and to complement some of the satellite data that was coming out. And so that's where actually the Hangar 360 app came in to play. And there's some interesting stuff that came out of that. Maybe, Gene, we can sync offline and chat about some of that stuff. But I think that there's, one of the reasons I really like the 360 app was it takes a couple minutes and it doesn't require extensive training. It's a one-button push for law enforcement. They don't need to know how to map or get capture overlap. And so that's a bigger conversation to be had about the fires, but it's definitely, it was out of my expertise as a plant mapping person, but I was happy to volunteer to help the law enforcement and the local agencies.
Yeah, that's well done.
It's pretty amazing. Dear viewer, if you're watching, I have posted it in the live comments. It's pretty, well, it tells a story, doesn't it, really, without having to tell a story, if you know what I mean. No huge explanation is required, just to satisfy me. Are these houses, what are these houses made of? Are they wooden?
Yeah, they're kind of your standard wooden residences. And that was, the first night of the fire, it came in, and really the city lost about 5% of its residences. So I think all told, between the 4 fires in California over the past couple of weeks, there's about 8,600 buildings and residences that were lost, and about 43 people so far. And
well, good day to the Solar Glider project, absolute heroes of mine. GPS spoofing, yes, that killed the I've forgotten the name of the helicopter platform now. The guys in South Korea, GPS spoofing from China, it put the thing through their ground control station. The Schliebel thing, big thing. Anyway, yeah, I know. I suppose that what this says, and where my head is randomly going, is it doesn't seem that a lot of information has been learned in the events Gene's been involved with. It seems, Greg, that you've been out and done some real good with this, and we have a community. We have to almost be able to react in an appropriate and safe way, and by that I mean with the fire service or with whoever, in a correct way, not just go out as a sort of maverick sort of operation and doing our own thing, and provide valuable information on the fly. And we're here, aren't we? Technology is here to do it. We just need to coordinate it. That's all.
Yeah.
And
you can't self-deploy.
No, you can't self-deploy. You absolutely can't self-deploy, but with the right training. So I should imagine, Gene, I'll let you speak to this. I should imagine if you volunteered to your local fire service or whatever and said, hey, I've got this, how could it be of use? You could train with them before an event, because it's bad news to try and do it during an event.
Right. We never recommend trying to pop into a disaster and offer aerial response, because that is a recipe for disaster. Yeah, you definitely need to coordinate with whoever you want to pair with there, whether it is your fire, search and rescue, or law enforcement. And I will say that we're working on an emerging standard for public safety use. We're quite heavily involved in that, and you're probably going to end up having to meet those requirements as well. So, I mean, it's typical stuff, like you got to be Part 107, you got to, have so many flight hours, such proficiency to do, different things like night ops and that sort of thing. But, that standard is achievable, and it's very common sense. So, we're gonna say, yeah, go down and check with your locals and see what they've got going. And if you can offer help, then they will accept it and they will start training with you.
I must admit,
that's interesting. I tried to set up a drone register here in New Zealand for times of civil defence and local emergencies, where basically anyone could go along and register with the drone register, and then that information will be available to the various emergency services in a particular area. So if they needed someone with a drone and certain capabilities, they could go to the register, look up the necessary requirements, and then contact that person to request their assistance, in the case of a civil emergency. But unfortunately, the emergency services and everyone else said, oh, too much risk, we don't want to know. And maybe things would be different now, but that was a couple of years ago. So hopefully the things are changing enough that they will realise this is a resource available to them in times of emergency. And it can be an incredibly valuable resource, but it needs to be organised and managed. And as Jean says, you need to make sure that the people have got the right skills, qualifications and experience to do it properly.
I was amazed. A lot of people were moaning that people required a 107 to go down to Houston, and I thought, well, at least it showed you haven't just gone to Best Buy and bought something to go off and be a rescuer. Yeah, I was amazed.
Obvious they didn't look at a sectional, because they would have seen what sort of airspace Houston was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, there's amazing images, Gregory. Well done. They really. They really do tell a story. And with that, I'm going to try and put the hammer down on today. It's been a good one. Before we go, does anyone else have anything else? No? Okay, cool. All right then. Going once then. Going twice. Thank you very much, dear viewer. Lots of you from all over the world, Australia through to the UK and America and France. It's very impressive. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Please join us again at 2100 next week, GMT. And if you've got any questions for all of us to ignore, then send them on and we'll duly ignore them. But no, please email them, Gary at susnews.com. Help Greg out. Go and map some. What was the web address there again, Gregory?
Flyforfall.com, fly4fall.com.
Flyfor4.com if you have that evil Apple stuff. Anyway, and DJI gear. So flyfor4.com. Bruce, obviously, RC model reviews and XJet, not worth watching. Jonathan has got some great tutorials for Part 107, potential Part 107 pilots, and does run through Lance very, very well on his website. So I encourage you to go and have a look at that. And Jean, what can I say about you? Nothing.
There's nothing to say for me or about me or anything else.
No, that's true. Nothing to say for you, that's for sure, Jean. Thanks very much. Thanks for everything you do. Again, thanks, dear viewer. See you all next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Adios, guys.
Bye-bye.